this week, I made a rule. No authors I have read before. I have so many books on my shelf with familiar authors to me, but I wanted to try something new. So 5 books, 5 brand new to me authors. It is a risk. Some I was certain would be 5 stars, but will any of them be my first DNF for the channel? Let's see.
Will this book be here one moment and gone the next? Will this book make me an anxious person? Will this book have one husband too many? Will this book break all the rules this summer? Will this book be ahead of its time?
The lineup was exciting. We've got psychics predicting death on a plane. We have anxious hostages. We have far too many husbands to count, and quite frankly, who'd want more than one anyway? We break some rules this summer, and we travel back in time. Now, that's a pretty diverse selection of books. Now, before we start, I have included some visual nods to each book throughout the video. See if you can spot them for each individual book, but I also do have a universal for the theme of new authors. So, here's how it went. Let's start with the book that the blurb instantly hooked me. So, book number 1, Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. I chose Here One Moment as, honestly, it sounded like it had a bit of a Final Destination vibe. Everyone knows that movie, right? I think there's a new one out as I'm filming. So, imagine this. You're minding your own business when an older lady stands up, seems to be in some sort of a trance, and begins to start predicting her fellow passengers' cause of death and age of death. A bit spooky, right? Some people think she's psychic, and other people think she's a bit crazy. But what happens when her predictions start coming true? Have their fates been foretold? And also, it begs the question, if you knew your future, would you fight your fate? Now, spoiler alert, I have tried to read Big Little Lies by the same author a couple of times, but I haven't ever got past the first chapter. So I'm still going to include it in the author's new to me because I've never read a full book of hers. So what are some of the good parts of the book? There are various points of view in the book, one including the psychic's Cherry. I think this works really well with the plotline, the story of the book. It really helps ramp up the suspense because, let's face it, you want to know whether they're going to die as predicted. It definitely has a Final Destination sort of vibe. I like thought-provoking books, and this is definitely one of them. For example, would you change your behaviour, your life, etc., if your death was foretold and possibly preventable? I liked a lot of the characters and then the reactions to the predictions. Some obviously think it's nonsense, and others are scared, understandably. Some even change their behaviour and their life to avoid the predictions. Now, as stated, one of the points of views is actually the psychic's Cherry. It goes into her background and her family history, which makes you question her abilities even more. So here are some of the parts I didn't necessarily like in the book. The opening scene, whilst good, felt a little bit slapstick to me, and I'm not a big fan of that in writing. Funnily enough, it's actually that put me off reading Big Little Lies when I attempted to start it. It just felt really over the top to me. I found the pacing was a little bit slow at times, and I feel like a few chapters or scenes could have been taken out to improve that. I wanted the book to lean into the Final Destination vibe more. I liked the theme of the book, but I just wanted more of the suspense and the thrillery sort of side.
Here are some of my favourite quotes from Here One Moment. Everyone loves a particular version of you, and when that person is gone, that version goes with them. You never know what your last words are going to be, so try to choose them all wisely.
Overall, whilst I liked the book, it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it would be a Final Destination vibe, and whilst it does have that to a degree, I just wanted more of it, to be honest. I liked the characters, especially the psychic, Sherry, but I felt in regards to the pacing, it could have been tweaked a little bit by having less scenes with her in particular. I enjoyed reading the book and I rated it 3.5 stars. But the big question is, would I read from this author again? Yes, I would. And maybe this time I'll be able to finish Big Little Lies. Now on to book number 2. Anxious People by Fredrik. This has been on my TBR for ages, and I've only seen 5-star reviews for it, so I had really high hopes for this book. It's New Year's Eve, and an estate agent hosts an open house in an apartment when a failed bank robber bursts in and takes everyone hostage. There are many different characters, from the strange married couple, the parents-to-be, a lonely bank manager, and an 87-year-old grandmother. So whilst the police start to form outside to try and control the situation, what is happening in the apartment? So what are some of the good parts of the book? It's definitely an interesting plotline. A failed bank robber stumbles into a hostage situation. That's a pretty good premise. Yet again, it's a thought-provoking book, especially in regards to humanity and how no one is infallible. I don't know if you can see that my cat's here. There are many different characters and they all have secrets, and some may come out whilst being held hostage, and that includes the police themselves. And here are some of the parts I didn't necessarily like within the book. I wasn't a fan of the writing. I found it a bit rambly. I did like the foreshadowing and the hints of what's to come, but overall it just didn't work for me. This is yet again another book I found to be quite slapstick. It's very OTT, and that's just not my humour in writing. I don't find it funny. There are scenes in the police station I truly found annoying. Personally, I didn't like any of the characters, even though there are quite a few of them in the book. There wasn't even one that I gravitated towards.
Here are some of my favourite quotes from Anxious People. A bank robbery, a hostage drama, a stairwell full of police officers on their way to storm an apartment. It was easy to get to this point, much easier than you might think. All it took was one single really bad idea. Happiness is like money, a made-up value that represents something we can't weigh or measure. Do you know what the worst thing about being a parent is? That you're always judged by your worst moments. You can do a million things right, but if you do one single thing wrong, you're forever that parent who was checking his phone in the park when your child was hit in the head by a swing. We don't take our eyes off them for days at a time, but then you read just one text message and it's as if all your best moments never happened. No one goes to see a psychologist to talk about all the times they weren't hit in the head by a swing as a child. Parents are defined by their mistakes.
Overall, while I definitely see some positives in the book, I don't really understand why it's been hyped up so much, to be honest. The slapstick style of writing is a huge bugbear of mine in particular, and I also found the writing was quite rambly and chaotic. Maybe my expectations were too high going in, but it definitely didn't live up to the expectations, unfortunately. I gave the book 3 stars, but the big question is, would I read from this author again? Yeah, I have a couple of Fredrik's books on my bookshelf, and I'm definitely willing to try them. However, if the writing style is the same as it is in here, he definitely won't be a favourite author of mine. And so, on to book number 3, The Husbands by Gramazio. and I hope I've pronounced that right. I originally saw Hayley fan review this book a little while ago, and I really liked the concept of it. Lauren, the female protagonist, comes home from a night out with friends to find a strange man in her house. He claims to be her husband. And if that isn't enough of a hook, while she's trying to work out what's happening, her husband goes up into the loft and comes down a completely different husband. Not only that, but Lauren's life around her has changed as well. So some superficial things like the length of her hair, the colour of the apartment, etc. But also some not so superficial things have changed. Lauren realises that every time the husband goes up into the loft, he changes, and so does her life around it. So what are some of the good parts in the book? I like the main character, Lauren. I felt like she was a real person as opposed to like an exaggerated character in a book. I really like how the book was written. I found it very personable and humorous without being over the top. Honestly, the concept of the book hooked me as soon as I heard about it. That was the best part for me. I found it fascinating to read. With each new husband, Lauren's life changes around her as well, so you get to see her new life, and that's all while she's trying to work out what's happening. And a little extra thing. I love how the author dedicated the book to Terry, her favourite husband. And here are some of the parts I didn't necessarily enjoy within the book. There were some parts that were a little bit slower than the others. I wouldn't say they were boring, just not quite as interesting as the other parts. I liked the concept of the book so much, I actually would have liked more of the book. So more stories of the husbands or more of Lauren's lives. I think it could have been taken further because the idea is just so good. I wasn't 100% sold on the ending. That's not to say that the ending is bad, but just I'm not sure I would have done the same thing that Lauren did if I was in her shoes. But at the same time, I do understand why the author went that way too.
Here are some of my favourite quotes from The Husbands. In the years before the first husband emerged from the attic, she had felt the burden of long singleness lying upon her. Being happy to be single had felt obligatory, a statement of feminism or autonomy, or just a way to head off coupled friends who she didn't want feeling sorry for her. The weight of that requirement had made it difficult sometimes to figure out how she really felt. You can't stay married to someone forever just because they climb out of your attic one afternoon.
Overall, I really enjoyed reading this book, and much more than I was expecting, to be honest. I flew through it, and I was just so intrigued with what husband might be next, or what might have changed in Lauren's life next. I even think this might be a book that I would reread again at some point, and that says a lot for me. I rated the book 4.25 stars. But what about the big question? Would I read from this author again? Yes, absolutely. This book was absolutely up my street, and I can't wait to see what other ideas Holly has for her next book. So next up is book number 4. The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. Meredith Fox is trying to overcome her grief after losing her beloved sister Claire about 18 months ago. Her extended family are gathering for a cousin's wedding, and they always play a game called Assassin. Assassin is basically a game where you shoot each other with water guns. If you're shot, you're out. You try to be the last person standing, basically, in the game. The book is told from Meredith's point of view, and is set at Martha's Vineyard, which is in the USA. So what are some of the good parts of the book? There's a possible romance with Whit, who is the main male character. They quickly form an alliance in Assassin and realise they might actually be catching feelings for each other. The romance part is heartwarming. There are many Taylor Swift references, and although I am a fan, I'm sure I didn't catch half of the references. The Assassin's Game element was actually really fun and fun to read about. There are also some secrets along the way. Here are some of the things I didn't necessarily enjoy within the book. As mentioned, Meredith is grieving her sister, so it's not just a light-hearted book, just to make you aware in case it might upset you. I found Meredith clings to her romantic partners a bit too easily, and I'm not a big fan of that in books. It's a personal preference. I found the romance seemed to come on a bit too quickly to be believable. I didn't think it really rang true, to be honest.
Here are some of my favourite quotes from The Summer of Broken Rules. This place, he trailed off to gaze at the moon. It's one of those special places where you feel like time doesn't exist, where it will always be summer, where I'll always wake up with you. I wasn't clinging to him. It was more like we were tangled together, an invisible string connecting us.
Overall, I enjoyed reading the book, but it didn't blow me away. I think it would definitely appeal more to the younger age range than me. It's quite light and sweet, but definitely not top of my list. I rated the book 3.75 stars, but honestly, in hindsight, I think I was over generous there. I'm not sure I would rate it that if I reread the book now. But the big question is, would I read from the author again? Yeah, I absolutely would read from Walther again. But I do wonder that if the rest of the books are aimed at the same sort of age range as The Summer of Broken Rules, then maybe it's not 100% the right fit for me personally. I love a good young adult book, but the ones I enjoy tend to be on the more mature side. Not intimacy style, just in general. And so, on to the last book of the video, The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. I originally saw the book reviewed by other booktubers and it was highly rated. I definitely saw a few 5 stars in there. So it was one of the top books I was looking forward to reading, not just for this video, but in general on my massive TBR list. The concept is a really interesting one. The main female protagonist applies for a job in the government, which turns out to be that they are bringing people from the past into the present day. They only choose people who have died, obviously, and also they get them right at the moment just before they die, so it doesn't affect anything in the present day. So the main character's job is what they call a bridge. They're basically a sort of babysitter for that one person from the past while they get used to the present day. Obviously it's going to be quite different from what they're used to. So what are some of the parts I liked in the book? I found the premise of the book was really interesting. Bringing people from the past into the present day and how different everything would be for them. I was really excited to see where the author was going to take it. I loved the fact that Commander Gore, who is the main male character, he's from the past, is based on a real person, and obviously there are some historical facts included from the past in this book as well. There are quite a few different themes in the book. Time travel, a bit of a subplot of romance, some drama, some twists, some turns, and some humour. But that does lead on to the bad points in the book. In regards to the themes, the problem is, unfortunately, in my opinion, they weren't done very well. I think the fact that it had so many different themes, it felt very shallow to me. If the author had leaned into maybe one or two of those themes and done them more deeply, I think it could have been a much better book, in my opinion. It felt like race was talked about a lot in the book. Now, I do understand why it was initially mentioned. I just don't feel like it needed to be mentioned as much as it was. I really, really didn't like the writing style. I found it was overly complicated and a bit flowery. That's not my favourite style. I found it a bit difficult to read at times due to that. I have to be honest, I was definitely bored at times reading it. It started to get a bit more interesting about 80% into the book. By that point, I didn't particularly care.
Here are some of my favourite quotes from The Ministry of Time. Life is a series of slamming doors. We make irrevocable decisions every day. A 12-second delay, a slip of the tongue, and suddenly your life is on a new road. I know how much you've longed for your future to lean down and cup your face, to whisper, "Don't worry, it gets better." The truth is, it won't get better if you keep making the same mistakes. It can get better, but you must allow yourself to imagine a world in which you are better.
Overall, I didn't particularly enjoy reading The Ministry of Time. I definitely went into it with high expectations. Like I said, it was the highest anticipated book on my massive TBR list. But I was so disappointed with it. It had a really exciting premise, I thought, but it just didn't follow through. And I did consider DNFing it quite a few times. I rated the book a 3-star in the end, but this is another book where I feel like if I reread the book again, it would definitely be lower. So the big question is, would I read from this author again? Well, it's hard to say 100% as authors can vary with how they write and also with the stories. So I don't think it would be fair of me to say I definitely wouldn't pick up another of the author's books again. I can definitely say, however, it would not be a top pick for me as a must-read. I have to say I'm actually really surprised with the glowing reviews of the book, but obviously what hits for some misses for others, and that's okay. Whew. Well, that was an interesting collection of books with some surprise hits and some disappointing, highly anticipated books. Have you read any highly anticipated books that disappointed you as well? Tell me about them in the comments below, I'd love to know. Now, before I go, here are the nods I did for each book. First of all, we have the universal nods, so new authors to me basically. We have the paper, we have the pen. This is the current book I'm reading, although I've read from V.E. Schwab before. But we have the bookmark and the Kindle. That's universal ones. For Here One Moment, we had the plane, the headscarf stroke veil, the snow globe, which I was pretending was a crystal ball, just for like the theme of a psychic, and the cherries, because her name was Cherry. For anxious people, I had the till for the bank robbery, the gun, again, for the bank robbery, the house for the apartment block, and the treasure chest for the theme of money. For the husbands, I had the ladder, the house, which obviously has a loft, and I have a plant because Lauren gets quite attached to a plant. This is editing. I forgot to add the little male figures for the many different husbands. For the Summer of Broken Rules, I had the water gun, I had the seasidey picture, I had the heart for the romance, and lastly, for the Ministry of Time, I had the Telling the Time box for the time travel, the ship for Gore's ship, and I had the heart for the subplot of romance and the gun.
This is editing. I also forgot to take away the seaside picture, so this has absolutely nothing to do with this book.
So did you manage to get all the nods for all the books? I hope so. If you have liked the video, please do like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thanks everybody. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.